Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the world's only podcast about cycling, style, fashion, culture, the world's only podcast that Universal Alex never hosts anymore.
We miss you, Alex.
Today you have Warren, me, and Italian Alex and Skyler. So welcome to you both.
Thanks, Warren. It's good to be back. And just to clarify to everyone that DM'd me after the last episode, no, Tony was being deeply unserious when he said that he was going to fire me and Skyler both from the show. You can't get rid of us that easily. We're still back. We're still on.
I'm never going anywhere. I'm happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Went from last episode saying you're both fired to you're both immediately on the next episode and Tony's not here. Well, I hope listeners don't mind my voice because I've been here a lot lately. So great to have you guys back. We also have a very exciting episode today because the main segment we have in today's episode, we're actually going to talk to Mikey Ojeda of Bleach Design Werks and Zach Lambert, founder of BlackHeart Bikes. They joined us to talk about the collaboration they did with each other, but also with MAAP. You've likely seen that collab because I feel like it broke the cycling internet when it dropped with like the pink bibs, the tech tee, the bike is like polished aluminum with a pink fork, Boo Johnson Pro Skaters in the photos. A lot of our listeners DM'd it to us. We obviously saw it, but also, I don't know, I was certainly a big fan of it. And so we're very excited to have them on the show and get to know a bit about Mikey's background because he kind of comes from the motorcycle world, and to hear a bit about Zach and BlackHeart Bikes, which they make metal bikes. So that's a plus in our books. Just a thank you to Cody Chenard from Luft, who we interviewed a few months ago because he made this interview come together. We think you'll enjoy it. But before we get to that, we did want to acknowledge that Worlds are happening right now. They've started as we're recording this. I mean, who knows, by the time this episode gets out, they might be over, even though they're like 2 weeks long. We did feel we wouldn't be good Canadians if we didn't talk about the fact that the Canadian national team, so all the Canadian riders who are at all these Worlds events are wearing a new team kit. So it was revealed about 4 days ago on the Cycling Canada official Instagram. And I think our listeners might remember that we've talked about the Canada kit in the past and how, or at least some of us think it was really bad, the old kit, and had like light blue in it. It was like red, light blue, a bit of white and black. Do you guys remember? Like, I honestly, am I right?
Yeah. It's like the main color of it was blue. It had like black bibs, but they were the Louis Garneau black bibs, so they never actually look like black. they look kind of stretched out no matter what. But they are black, and then it had like the maple leaf, and it said Canada and had some white on it. But the main color was like that, like sky blue color, which has been in the Canada kit for, I don't know, forever. How many years? Forever.
Yeah, for as
we're
long
just gonna say for eternity. It's been there. So
been there. Like I think, like going back, like didn't when like Steve Bauer was racing, like even back then,
probably
the national kit had that blue in it. And so they've dropped that from like the color scheme of the national team kit. And it's just so disappointing because I know there's no blue on the flag. Like technically our flag is red and white and the kit is now red and white, but it's just dropping such an iconic part of our like kit's color scheme that it's now no longer recognizable. It's like a totally big shift. And I don't see any point of deviating from the standard formula of the Canadian cycling national team kit. We miss the blue. We want the blue back.
I don't personally. But to briefly talk about the new kit, it kind of just looks like the Canadian flag on top of black bibs is like the base level. But then each of the sleeves have these like an additional maple leaf on the shoulder, and then this like kind of pattern of maple leaves down, which is just, it's so Canadian it hurts. The core of the body is white with the red maple leaf in the center, and then the logo Global Relay above, which I assume is a team sponsor. It's made by Louis Garneau again, which is unfortunate. Any Louis Garneau kit I've had has been pretty bad. And for our listeners not in Canada, they make custom kit and a lot of local teams use it. Anyway, I'm not a fan. And then, you've got the Canada word mark on the bibs, on the legs. You've got the textured Canadian maple leaf icons in black and white on the bibs. I'm looking at it. I'm just like, what were they thinking? I don't know. I like this better than the old kit. I really hated the sky blue personally. What do you guys think of this new one?
I really like the kit, but I will miss the blue because the blue is really easy to spot, because in races, and especially like at the track when you're at the velodrome and you get to watch everyone and you see them coming around so many times, the blue was so easy to point out. But I do think this red looks so Canadian. It looks really good. And like all the other countries, like their national team kits are their actual flag, and ours never was. And now I guess it is.
I see that point, Skyler. Like, your country's colors should be reflected in the kit, but I think like in sporting culture, there's many cases where national teams' kit colors are different than like the flag colors. Like if you look at the Netherlands, for instance, like with the orange kit, like I think the Dutch flag is red, white, and blue, but like all Dutch sports are so intertwined with the color orange that like if you were to make a Dutch kit that was just red, white, and blue, it would be like a total catastrophe. If you look at Italy, like all their sports teams have blue national team kits, and it's been like that for like a century. So for some reason, Cycling Canada forever has just had elements of blue in the team kit.
But Canada doesn't own that sky blue color, like that's kind of that's why my objection to it is like used by sort of a lot of other countries, and that's kind of why I always didn't like it. So I like that they've taken it out of this, but for me, this new kit, it looks like they like downloaded a template from like a stock graphics site, like a Shutterstock, and because it's just like the Canadian flag, and then somebody copy and pasted the maple leaf from the center of the jersey, made a pattern, and put a gradient of it on the sleeves and the bottom of the bibs. Like there's no design here. It was designed by somebody who is not a graphic designer, in my opinion.
It's very safe.
Well, it's safe, and it's just, no offense to whoever designed this, it's just not a well done design. Like it's like, I'm not a designer. It's literally what I could throw together in Photoshop. That said, I appreciate that it's kind of showing off the flag a little better. I don't know. It just feels like a missed opportunity to really actually do something graphically interesting with the flag, rather than kind of just copy and paste it and then throw a gradient over it.
Yeah, you want to look at interesting national team kits, and especially national track team kits. You've got to look at, and I'm going to give a huge shout out here to the Cycling Federation of Nigeria, who by a long shot has the nicest national team kit on the track and in all disciplines of cycling. I think they're just specific to track right now. I don't know if they're participating in other disciplines of cycling at Worlds, but those track kits from Nigeria go absolutely crazy. I love them. They're so cool. And I think that they have a very fun pattern that goes from the top to the bottom of the kit. It's white with like a green.
Oh yeah.
Stripe. It's incredible.
That's
nice. I look at this and I think, why couldn't we have done something crazy like with the maple leaf?
That's great. See, that's what I mean though. Like, you could have done that with like just as an example, like a full body red maple leaf, white background, like pattern across that. That would have been so much better.
Yeah. We're afraid of taking risks, and as a result, our national kit languishes.
We are Canadian. We don't want to offend anyone. So. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, other than on the track, I don't think there's any risk of this kit appearing on a podium.
Got him!
Am I wrong? Sorry, with apologies to Michael Woods.
It would be unpatriotic for me to say that we're not going to podium every year.
I said other than track. We have some good track athletes, no?
You said it, not me.
There's some speedy juniors out there. Maybe
that's true. Podium. Yeah, you got the Holmgrens and...
Yeah.
No, you're right. That's true. Sorry, I was thinking of the elite level, but you're right. We do have some good juniors, especially in like mountain biking and such. And even in one of the Holmgrens is in the road race too. So anyway, I'm sure listeners have already fast forwarded through this part. Enough talk about ugly kit. Let's get to the interview with BlackHeart Bikes and Bleach Design Works, so we can talk about this really nice kit they did with MAAP and the nice full build bike that is available through BlackHeart. Now for our next segment, our main segment today, we are very excited to welcome two very special guests and talk about a pretty great collaboration that dropped recently, and our listeners might be wondering why we haven't talked about it yet. Well, this is why. We are very pleased to welcome Mikey Ojeda of Bleach Design Works and Zach Lambert from BlackHeart Bikes to talk about the new capsule collaboration they've done with MAAP Apparel. We're very thrilled to welcome Mikey and Zach today to talk a bit about this collaboration and then their own histories as well. So, Mikey and Zach, welcome to Cycling Fashion Week.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, Warren, thank you for having us.
To just sort of start off, Zach and Mikey, can you each sort of just introduce yourselves and give a bit of background about your personal history with bikes? You can go as in-depth or not in-depth as you want. And then Zach, maybe a bit about BlackHeart, and Mikey, you can tell us a bit about Bleach.
You want to start it off, Zach? Run it up?
Yeah, so my personal history with bikes, I grew up in New Hampshire in the 80s, which was kind of peppered with BMX racing in New England. It was kind of the thing to do in the summertime. Everybody would travel around from town to town. And so that was my first intro, ages like 6, 7, 8. And BMX kind of fell out of favor in the late 80s. And then the mountain bike boom of the 90s hit, where everybody had a mountain bike, and that was like, the thing to do. So I got into mountain biking, but never competed in mountain biking. I grew up ski racing, so that was my main sport on the East Coast. Raced through high school, raced through college, and then kind of lost cycling in the 2000s. I was living in New York City, not a ton of cycling to do, at least at that time, and I hadn't gotten into road riding yet. So in 2008, I moved to LA, and I had been riding a little bit of motocross in New Hampshire before I moved out. And I got to LA, and the tracks out in LA were pretty big, and I'd only ride them like once a month. So I pretty quickly deduced that I was going to break my neck or have some sort of severe injury. And so sold my motocross bike and bought a road bike and just started going to any group ride that I could find, and really fell in love with road cycling. And then around 2012, 2013, probably something we all experienced was the increase of texting and driving, and just started getting a little scared of riding on the LA roads, and started riding my road bike on all the fire roads out there. And that was kind of where gravel was starting to become a little more popular, and everyone was looking for cyclocross bike to ride as a road bike or a gravel bike or whatever it is. And this whole process just kind of led to me trying to find the perfect bike, which for me was a combination of brand and price and aesthetic and design and capability, which I really couldn't find in one package. And so that's why I started BlackHeart, which was a titanium all-road bike. And now it's kind of evolved beyond that. We've introduced a road bike, or we've got some other bikes in the works coming, but that's kind of my flow into cycling and what ended me up here.
Very cool. So my name's Mikey Ojeda. I am a designer that is born in Los Angeles and lived in the area most of my life. I'm back in LA, so I own a brand called Bleach. We build and design custom motorcycles, so mainly dual sport bikes, but anything from Harleys to sport bikes or anything of that nature. Two wheels have really been ingrained in me and my family since I can remember. Obviously, I think like most of us, all of our days on a bike start with BMX. So BMX and motocross were really kind of like my early ages and teens, and then led through my career choices. Yeah, it's cool to motorcycles pretty much took over the bicycle side of things, but my early 20s working with like supercross and motocross racers, cycling was a training tool. So that's where I was introduced to like road cycling. As we dive into, the reasons of this collaboration, road cycling was a bit scary for our aesthetic, coming from skateboarding and a fashion background of like seeing tight bibs and stuff like that. We didn't quickly accept it, but the more I embraced riding and embraced what it was being used for at the time in my life is where I fell in love with it. So years later to circle back to having a brand that, doesn't really have anything to do with cycling. Yes, we do with two wheels. It was a really cool moment to go back to like one of my favorite things to do, which is road cycling. So partnering with BlackHeart and MAAP were, beyond dream come true. And it's cool just to play a part and see like the cycling community accept it as well as it did.
Mikey, maybe you can tell us a bit more about your history with the motorcycle world and your connection to that, because going on your website and your Instagram, seeing you've done, as you mentioned, like you've painted bikes for like Nigel Houston, pro skater. I think we figured out a lot of our audiences found bikes through the skateboarding world. So he's obviously somebody stood out to me. And then Justin Bieber I saw. So it seems like you're pretty ingrained in that world. And I was hoping you could just tell us a bit about that, because we're obviously, you know, cyclists. None of us have motorcycles.
No, for sure. You know, with two wheels, like I said, with motocross, it comes from a very like traditional background. So I grew up riding. My dad, you know, grew up riding, so that was something he passed on to me at an early age. I started at 5. You know, up until 15 or so is when I stopped riding or like racing. I was never too serious with it, but definitely like the traditional style of like track riding only. We didn't ride trails, we raced. It was very formal. But I did have this side of life where, you know, I did skateboard and I did spend time at the skate parks, and I wasn't just this motocross kid that didn't know other sides of the world. I think that's really what made my brand, you know, what it is now. Is it's very much just a story of myself. Motorcycles are the root, but it didn't ever stop there, and the influence was far from inside of the motocross industry. Mm-hmm. I was always influenced by things outside of it. You know, the first bike I actually built before the brand was even a brand, or I even thought I was building bikes, was for Nija. Nija's a good friend of mine that I met through friends of skateboarding and just similar interests. So it was just kind of a trickle effect of seeing like the way he wanted to use it, and really like the way I love to design is from like a naive perspective of what you're actually in, you know. And if you use it with cycling, like I told Zach in the beginning of our collaboration, I'm like, I don't want to know too much about cycling. I don't want to know too much of, even with MAAP, like I don't want to see what you guys have done too much, or what Rafa's doing, or what, you know, any other brands are doing. I just want to come from what I think bike gear should look like. So that's kind of where, you know, influence from skateboarding and other people have, you know, been this inlet to the things I love the most, which are obviously motorcycles.
Maybe just to go to the start, can you tell us how this collaboration between Bleach and BlackHeart and MAAP came to be? Because I definitely, the kit was the first thing that caught my eye, but then I also noticed the bike itself, with the pink fork and the polished aluminum. How did that all come together?
You know, I think Zach and I can both agree through our mutual friend, Andrew Jackson, who's a cyclist as well. Andrew and I have been friends since we were probably 14 or 15. We grew up riding motocross and BMX together. Andrew's a very, very special human, especially in my life, that he's one of those kids that does everything and he's good at everything he does. So seeing his transformation from like cycling, BMX, motocross, BMX, and now cycling, you know, his first sponsor was BlackHeart. And so following along with him and always keeping in touch and having the love for road bikes, you know, he's like, you should design a bike one day, or at least talk to Zach and buy a bike or get a bike. And it was just in the family of like, okay, one day, you know, I'll meet Zach and we'll talk and see if it works out. But yeah, it was just over a beer. Me and Zach met up and kind of just aligned on some collaboration stuff that he wanted to enter in with his brand. And I was at the point where, you know, I love designing motorcycles, but there's more to me than just staying in one genre of bike or even one genre of anything. You know, I don't want to ever put myself in a box. So it was really cool to you know, sit and talk with Zach, and him just really enable me and just be like, hey, these are our bikes, these are the options, do what you want to do and we'll support it. It was cool to feel that. And then we tied in with MAAP. Dylan Lima at the time was the connect over there, and Jared was in town in LA, so I got to meet with him, and that was just a, you know, friendship right off the bat. So we got to hanging out and riding, and it all just came together, and it was really just the synergy of good people being willing to work with each other, and I think that's the story really behind it.
You know, when I started BlackHeart, it was, I'd say, kind of a product-based company, like I said, right? It was a bike that I wanted but couldn't quite find. And as I was working on building the company, I kind of started thinking about my experience as a cyclist coming to LA in 2008 and just showing up blind to group rides. I think everyone feels this in cycling, regardless who you are. There's this bit of like you don't fit in, you don't have the right bike, your sock height isn't the right height, you don't have the right glasses over your helmet straps. And if I feel that as a white male, then I know a lot of other people feel it. About a year and a half ago, I started thinking through, if BlackHeart's going to be more than just a company that makes a good bike, what is that purpose? And part of the purpose for me is trying to make the cycling world more welcoming and inclusive. If you want to do that, one way to do it is just to show different people riding bikes, right? It's like, oh, I see someone who looks like myself, and that means that, oh, that could be interesting. I could see myself doing it. And we've seen a really great shift over the past few years where brands are starting to champion people of different backgrounds. But I think there's an opportunity to do more than that. And you can't just kind of put this out in the ether and just assume that people are going to see it and come and like want to be a part of it. You have to kind of build that desire to be part of cycling and to try and quote unquote make it cool or make it interesting. And so about a year and a half ago, I started thinking about these collaborations that we could do. And like Mikey mentioned, Andrew was one of the original BlackHeart ambassadors. He now rides for Canyon. He introduced Mikey and I, and we just started talking, and we really quickly figured out that we're kind of that same cut of cloth. And I think by bringing in a face of the campaign like Boo Johnson, showing people that, okay, skating is cool, skaters bike for training, okay, that I actually don't have this bad opinion of cycling anymore, or I'm interested in trying it. I think that's the real goal of the collab. It's more than just trying to do something interesting or like to kind of bring outside influence into cycling. And I think the long-term vision of doing something like this would be to shift cycling over time so that a skate brand wants to do a collab with a cycling brand versus the current experience, which is cycling brands trying to work with brands outside of the ether to try and make cycling more cool, right? Like that would be success in my mind.
On one of the Instagram posts about this capsule, Mikey, there's a quote from you about part of the inspiration for it was like both getting the attention of people in cycling, but also people who maybe aren't in cycling or even a little fearful of that. So is that part of the design inspiration there as well? You're saying is designing it how you see it, but was it also just creating something that not the typical cyclist might be into?
Our campaign tagline was happy to ride here. And one of the biggest things, to touch base on what Zach said was just, I think cycling is, when you look at it, like I said, when I first stumbled upon it, it's fearful. There's a fear when you look at it. You think of Lance Armstrong. That's all you know of cycling growing up. Most people, you're like, oh, Lance Armstrong in tight clothes, and that's really, it looks like an older man's rich sport. And I think that the beauty I found in it, especially at that time, was I didn't have very much money. I didn't, it is definitely a sport that you have to have some money to participate, but it's like golf. I think golf just looks like it's this upper echelon sport that like can't be approached unless you look the way all golfers look, or if you look all the way cyclists look. That was the biggest thing, was I want to share that, break those boundaries of that fear for cycling, where it's like you don't need to look like the average cyclist, or you don't need to, only be in France riding the nicest, best roads, or in Malibu or in Orange County. Like, Happy to Ride here is a campaign showing wherever you live, like, cycling is something that can suit you and something that, I find that enhances my life and can enhance a lot of other people's lives. So, when we went to the bike design, like the mirror finish was like this mirror that you can look at and see a reflection of yourself and be okay with seeing yourself on a bike. Be happy with riding, on the roads of downtown LA that might not look as nice as, the beautiful roads that a lot of road bike ads are shot on. For us, it's riding in Venice. Like, it's riding downtown. It's, it's hectic. There's cars, there's this, there's that, but that's where we live. I'm not going to drive to Palos Verdes or somewhere where I'm, it just doesn't make sense. So instead of shying away from cycling because my path doesn't look the way it's been advertised, I've just embraced where I'm at. So I hope that, through this collaboration, we can grab new eyes and open the sport and, like I said, enhance people's lives with cycling.
Yeah, I think that from our perspective, like on the podcast, we've reviewed a lot of different brands and releases, capsule collections from a bunch of different cycling kit makers and bike brands. And I think what we consistently come back to in reviewing our favorite kits and brands and campaigns is those that tell the truth in depicting their products. Like yourselves, we live in Toronto, which is like a very industrial city. Our riding is not beautiful at all. It's a lot of industrial side roads, arterial streets with traffic. And so it's not those beautiful Mediterranean landscapes that a lot of cycling brands mythologize in their advertising. And I think that's what drew us so much to the MAAP, Bleach, BlackHeart collection, was that it's kind of telling the truth. It's showing cyclists, other cyclists that look like themselves, riding in locations that they frequent themselves to. And I think that's what drew us so much to your collaboration.
I mean, that's great to hear, Alex, because that's really, where we came from. And it's not coming from a place of cycling and cyclists and brands are doing it wrong. You need to advertise to everyone. And a lot of people's worlds do look like the Mediterranean. And I won't lie, I'll go there and ride too,
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to do it all. But I think that being in a Los Angeles collaboration, being from LA, loving the city where we're at is like, let's love our surroundings. Let's not shy away from things that maybe just haven't been advertised in our zones yet. So, for the first ones to do that, hopefully, we can capture a new genre of people and see different looking people riding. And Zach touched base, like having Boo as the face of the campaign was like such a crucial part because he does cycle, and Boo's from Long Beach, and it's cool to just to see someone from like skateboarding and fashion culture like love cycling as much as you guys do, as much as I do, and we all come from different worlds, but what is the bicycle is our unity. So that was a really cool moment.
To borrow from the skateboarding world, is this sort of like the Boo Johnson pro model in a way?
Yeah, I'm down to call it that. We gave him his bike yesterday, so we're gonna go on a ride tomorrow morning. So I'll let him know. Boo Johnson model.
One of our hosts, Tony, who's not here, the first thing he said when Cody sent us like some photos of the collection was, "Is that Boo Johnson?" Because Tony still very much like follows the skateboard world, doesn't skate as much anymore because he's got a bad knee and he's older. But it just made us wonder, like, BlackHeart has some ambassadors. Do you think pro model bikes is like a thing that's gonna come to the industry? And I mean less like the world tour pros who obviously get their own bikes to sell the $15,000 bikes. Maybe that's a thing to open up cycling a little bit, is start having these pro models with figures from other sports who are also into cycling, somebody like Boo Johnson, or you have your John Cardiel who rides fixed gear. Do you guys think that's something that could come to the cycling world?
I'm sure. I mean, in effect, I don't want to call it that because like we don't have a contract, and I'm sure we'll have to do something about that. But the bike is sold in that build. It's Mikey's build, right? I would say it's actually the Mikey Ojeda Bleach pro model. We're not selling the frame sets where you can't customize it. That is the bike. And if you want it, awesome. And if not, that's fine too. I think what I'd like to see is, and one of the reasons why I use tie and aluminum a lot, is that 100% carbon fiber is the wonder material that can be aerodynamic and light and stiff and win tour races. But for the average person, saving 8 seconds over a 40-kilometer time trial does not matter, right? Mm-hmm. And so the aluminum bike for us, it's the most approachable model that we have. It's not the cheapest model out there. And that's definitely something that we struggle with and are trying to reconcile, right? We want to offer a bike that is more accessible to people, but there are cheaper bikes out there. And for me, that's a scale issue. I think when BlackHeart gets to a certain size, we'll be able to use that size to bring down the cost of goods. But in the meantime, what I'd like to see is customization of bikes. Like I'd like to see people drawing on their bikes and sticker bombing them and painting them themselves. Like there are brands out there that do that. There are brands that offer custom paint, but it usually seems like a out of reach upgrade. So that's something we're exploring in the future, especially with the aluminum bike, is giving people that flexibility to order it with a custom color or kind of design it the way they want to design it, and have the bike as like an accessory, an expression of you, versus like, I think a lot of time the attention goes to the bike. People don't roll up and are like, oh dude, Warren, is that you? Well, maybe they do. Like, I'm so sorry. They walk up, they're like, oh man, like, is that new bike that you just purchased and it's the same one that everybody else has? Like,
Yeah.
I'd love for people to focus less on brand name, cost level, whatever, and just create super awesome bikes that they love and are an expression of themselves.
To answer that question as well, I think that we're kind of doing it. You know, like Zach said, it was a really cool thing when Zach and I were talking, and then we partnered with SRAM on this as well, and Hunt Wheels and Victoria Tires. Was when we were talking about how we were going to sell the model, we were like, you know, I think it was Zach's idea, was like, hey, let's sell it, build it the way you want it. What does this bike look like if you went online and ordered everything? And that was the thing with SRAM. I'm like, okay, I want this bike. The only way you can get the Bleach bike is it has to come complete, and it has to come with the new SRAM force. It needs to come with, you know, the Hunt wheels that I like, the 44s with, you know, I didn't want carbon spoke, I wanted steel spoke. So it was just like little things like that it's the same way I sell motorcycles. Like, a lot of people ask me, can you design a graphic? And I don't design a graphic. It's either you build the whole bike or you don't get one. And it's not from an arrogant place or you know, this or that. It's just, we do things one way, and we like to do them the best we can. So I think pro model, I think, is very much something that is going to be happening and should be happening. And even like you see Palace and Cannondale, like they sell the frame set, but it would be really cool to see, like, okay, what's the designer, what's the eyes from behind Palace that cycles that either had interest to do that? What's the full setup look like? And I want to ride the full setup.
It's cool to know, like, that's how you approach motorcycles. And I think that's really an interesting idea, because especially in cycling, I feel like you see people have like such a specific idea of how they want to build up their bikes. I mean, I just like put on stuff that works and I'm good. And
Yeah.
we'll also throw yet another plug for aluminum and titanium. We're definitely all for bikes that are more approachable, but also, you know, ideally last longer too. We see often at some of our places we ride in Ontario, and especially once we get out of the city, the more scenic areas, we'll see like motorcycle clubs stopping at some of the same like cafes we stop at, but we don't really kind of know that world, obviously. Do you think there's any similarities between kind of that road cycling and the world of motorcycles in terms of like club culture? Is there any overlap there?
I mean, for me, like, as far as like motorcycle culture like that, I'm pretty removed from it. Like, I don't do bike shows. I don't do that whole thing. And, you know, it's to each his own. I've just figured out that the genre and the people that I want to touch, I mean, I want to touch everyone, but at the same time, that side of things, like the bike shows or anything like that, is kind of like outside of my realm. But I think there is a unity in riding, you know, like when I do ride, like I call Nigel and I call the boys, and like, you're like, all right, let's go ride. Our rides look a little different, but yeah, I would say that there is a similarity with cycling, because at the same time with cycling, I like to ride with my friends, and, you know, typically there's a destination point, or after there's a, hey, let's grab a coffee or grab some food. So I think that they do have those synergies of, you know, they both are almost better spent with someone, especially someone that you like. Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Zach? I think from a cyclist side of things, I always hear group ride. I always hear like, let's ride together. You know, there's very much like unity within it.
I'd say all sports, right? It's a you ride, like most people ride as a hobby. And why do you do hobbies? Because you like them. You nerd out on them. You like the tech. You like the gear. You read stories. You look at other people doing it. I don't own a motorcycle anymore, but when I used to, you roll up and you see someone's new whatever side saddle bag or something on their bike, or they have new handlebars. It's something that you get into, and there is a solidarity there. And I think with cycling, it's that same idea. It's just it looks different. Mikey's mentioned it, right? Like the biggest barrier to entry for anyone in cycling is the look. People are like, wait, do I have to wear the tights? Do I have to have the clip-in shoes? The helmet looks weird on my head. The background on the design process of kind of Mikey's vision, there was so much more that we talked about. And I think in the future, there's an opportunity to bring more streetwear desire or Mikey's style or other kind of fashion or designer style into cycling. It's hard to tell in the pictures, but the tech tee, it's not just the design on it, it's the material. It's much more, Mike, you can talk this way better than I can, but it's much more akin to a motocross jersey, and the cut as well. So I think that tech tee is the most interesting part of the collab to me. MAAP kind of hit it out of the park, and they've been an amazing partner to really work with Mikey on it. Mm-hmm. But I think that would be interesting, Mike, if you want to talk about the industrial kind of approach to the wear that you wanted to create versus just only the kind of visual design of it.
That was going to be my next question about that t-shirt, because it did remind me of sort of motocross, that kind of thing. But I did notice that it wasn't just, a long sleeve t-shirt. It looked like it was sort of like a performance piece. So yeah, we'd be interested to hear your approach to that.
For sure. I mean, that was probably one of the first pieces that we spoke about with MAAP. When we laid out what a collection looked like. MAAP is great, from Jared to Misha to Ollie to everyone, Ian, the whole crew. They were just like, the more and more we dove into it, it was like, we want more. It started from like, let's make a shirt to let's make a collection. Now we're doing women's, now we're doing more. Like, what's next? It was really cool to work with people that just believed in what we were doing, and that belief started with that tech tee. Was I shared with them, I'm like, to break these boundaries of fear, it's not just like, oh, they just put a cool design on a silhouette that's still scary. The long sleeve to me is like being inspired by Andrew Jackson, like seeing him. I gave him a sweater that we made for a collection with Deus like 3 years ago, and he would send me pictures like riding in it all the time. It was a crew neck, and I'm like, okay, like that looks pretty cool. And when you go back to like my bike design is, I like to design from like a naive perspective. It's hard for motorcycles because I've been in that world from pro to, not racing pro, but been involved with all the pro teams and pro bike builders, all that stuff. So I know a lot about it, but I try to design from a different perspective. So when I was looking at the gear and breaking that boundary, was the bikes I want to look a certain way, but I want them to always be, I don't want performance to ever lack. So a lot of people are like, oh, he just paints bikes and makes this, changes colors and, does graphics and has a celebrity clientele. But if you break my bikes down, if you take the suspension down, you take the motors down, like they're race bikes. They're built for performance. I don't necessarily like create the aesthetic to look like a race bike because I want them to touch a different person. I want the different clientele to be influenced by it. So when we got to that long sleeve, I'm like, okay, this long sleeve is a good entryway of being like, I don't feel like I'm in the tightest gear, but I never wanted to shy away from the bib. I was like, the bib is so essential. Like, I would never ride without a bib. Like, you need that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what's the best way we can create an entryway for a guy like Boo or a guy like Naja or I to be like, okay, I'm okay with the bib because it makes sense, like the seat, the bunching up, all that, but the tight jersey with the bib is just a lot. So, yeah. Let's create this jersey that kind of hangs over and you feel okay walking into a coffee shop. You feel fine, stopping for a drink. And at the same time, we're like, I have probably 90% of my friends and we're like, oh, I just want the shirt to wear. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to wear it riding. Like, so it was just that now we're getting people in cycling brands that don't even ride. And it's cool just to see the diversity. So that piece was just probably the most monumental piece in the whole collection, was just like this merging of like, I hope cyclists love it. I hope they kind of feel fashionable wearing it. I hope people that have nothing to do with cycling are interested in it. And at the same time, it's that bridge and connection from, the fear of looking, a little uncomfortable.
When we see new collections released, a lot of our listeners will actually in the DMs send it to us and ask us for our opinion. And one thing we consistently got when the Bleach collection released was the coincidental timing with the pink tones that come with the shorts and the jersey with the release of the movie Barbie. And so we know that a lot of our listeners are going to ask about the coincidence of that occurring. Was there any intentionality in that, or was that just like a very circumstantial timing of those two things?
Yeah, so I was actually a co-producer on Barbie, and they gave me a huge check incentive to drop this collection at the same time because they were like, we really need help with ticket sales. So this cycling kit is probably going to send us over. So yeah, I got a nice check coming in the mail.
For a half second, I believed you just because like LA seems like the kind of thing where that would actually happen.
100%.
I know. No, it's not far-fetched. No, dude, it's a coincidence. Pink is a Bleach color. Pink is my favorite color.
Would you say that tone of pink is sort of your signature color, or?
For sure, yeah. Pink chrome and like a nice like fashion offset of gray are my favorites for sure. It's funny because we did actually push this deadline out a few times. Like this was supposed to come out maybe, what would you say, Zach, 4 months ago was like our initial date, and then it got pushed out 2 months, and then it dropped, and I saw some of the comments like oh, Barbie, and I'm like, you know, everything happens for a reason, you just embrace it.
The original like deck that I put together when I was concepting the collabs, I had doing one of these once a quarter. And I think after doing the first one, it'll be a yearly thing.
We recently designed a t-shirt just for ourselves, not even for sale, and it took us like 6 months. So I can only imagine.
Yeah, and
then
brands factor in global production timelines and delays in shipping, and 3 companies. It was a monumental lift, and I don't think we could have done it, not only without Bleach participating, obviously, but MAAP. Without MAAP participating, they did such a monumental lift, getting the apparel ready on time and delivered. But then also our partners, Mikey mentioned, like SRAM, Zip, Hunt, Physique, and Vittoria. They all came on board, provided the parts, and have helped with the promotion of everything. And so it speaks a lot to the community that we have. Mikey mentioned, like, we were introduced through Andrew Jackson. I was introduced to Andrew through a shooter named Amato. I met Amato through just the local cycling community in LA. Everything that we've done with BlackHeart, and I think Bleach is the same way, it's really been an organic connection of community. We've always said, like, okay, cool, who would be, let's get a skater to do the thing. But it's like, well, no, it's got to be a skater who rides. Like Jess Meany, the female model in the campaign, she rides, she's a BlackHeart ambassador, and she crushes. That for me is kind of the biggest lesson out of this. I don't know if there's a right or a wrong way to build a company, but it's never been easier to build your community, especially that we have digital connection. And so anyone out there looking to say, like, oh, that was super rad, I'd love to do something like that with my company or my brand, I would say, don't just shoot someone a DM and say, hey, do you want to do a collaboration? You have to take the time to build the relationships. And it's a slow growth, but I think it's a sustainable growth that leads to success in the end, or hopefully will lead to success for everybody in the end, versus trying to like don't think about the end thing. Like, oh, how do we make a viral collab? It's like, that should be the fortuitous result of just doing something fun and cool with your friends versus trying to come up with some sort of strategy around that.
I think kind of like what Zach touched base on with our partners, like one of the beauties in being partnered and having SRAM and Zip and everyone who was a part of it, Physique, like what was cool is they really believed in the project and really believed in what the ethos was behind it. And we were able to build 5 bikes off the rip, at the beginning of the collaboration, to be seeded to different people in LA. So it was really cool. Like, one bike went to James Kirkham, which is a dear friend of mine. He's a very influential person in LA, one of the owners of Race Service, Mercedes-Benz ambassador. And, he had the interest in cycling. And I shared with Zach in the beginning, I'm like, let's pick a few people. And if SRAM and all of them are on board, let's build a few bikes that we can seed to these people. So, one bike went to James Kirkham. So now James is now going to be an avid cyclist that he rode a little bit years back, and now he's able to ride again. And we gave one to Boo Johnson took one, and then Dominic, the shoe surgeon, which is a very, very creative and just influential person as well, that creates custom shoes and is just like a good definition of someone who doesn't put himself in a box and is doing everything from boxing outfits to just so many different things. But his influence and interest in cycling is now going to be fulfilled, and he's going to open the doors for a lot of people to be like, hey, I can ride too, or Dom rides, James rides, Boo rides. We got to send one bike over to MAAP, and they did a release out of their lab in Melbourne, I believe. So it was really cool to be partnered by and embraced by the cycling community to really like put an outreach on people outside of cycling.
So everyone was so excited about your collaboration. Is there any plans for future collaboration between Bleach and BlackHeart and MAAP, or anyone that we can get the fans excited for to look forward to?
You just dropped it, but what's next?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we don't have anything on the books, but like I said, the initial idea was actually doing 4 collabs this year. And obviously there's 3 that we started discussions on, but they're all in the same cut of cloth, right? It's interesting people who like have their own brand or have created a company or influential in a space outside of cycling, but they themselves like to cycle. They ride. It's part of their life, and we want to show that off. There will be more, but stay tuned, and you won't miss it when it does come out.
For my side of things, I think just the love from the cycling community that we got on this, and the way they were open arms to, I mean, a lot of people probably in the cycling world didn't know who I was or really know where it was coming from, but just all the positivity, like, really, I'm inspired. I want to do it again. I think we'll do something again with MAAP, I'm sure, and drop another collection. And anything like that. Like, I think any way we can be a part of the cycling community and all grow together has me excited. So I definitely don't think this is the end.
Awesome. That's exciting.
And just as we're wrapping up, Zach, on BlackHeart and Mikey, even from Bleach, whether it's cycling or not, do either of you have like any other projects coming up that you want to kind of like mention or have our audience keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I mean, we always have a lot of cool stuff going on. BMW's been a big partner with us, so we're doing a lot of stuff with BMW, and that's one thing I really want to merge with cycling. I see this vision of car meets bike meets motocross, so I think that's one thing to look out for. But really, anything we're doing, I think, from Bleach, Race Service, Flower Shop, anything like that. Whether it's me or my whole crew, like, we're all doing really cool stuff. So I think it's the community around us. We're around good people, so you'll see a lot of cool stuff and see familiar faces for sure.
From BlackHeart perspective, so the big news this year was we launched a road bike. It's titanium only, but the all-road titanium aluminum, that for me was echoing classic road design. It was something that would look beautiful 20 years ago or 20 years in the future. The road bike is all modern road design. It's fully electronic only. It's fully integrated. It's an arrow-shaped camtail down tube, flared top tube. So the industrial design of it is just, I think, incredible, and the prettiest titanium road bike that's out there today. We are working on a way to increase our customization program. So right now we offer ways to customize your fork through a paint program. But as I mentioned, like, I'd love for people to be inspired by this and not just say, oh, I want the Mikey bike. Like, I want them to want their bike. So we're working on a way to make that easier for folks. And then, the plan is to launch a new bike at Sea Otter next year in April. So that one is still under wraps, but something will be coming for spring.
For our listeners out there, I encourage you to follow Mikey's work On Instagram, it's at bleach_designworks, spelled WERKS, or bleachdesignworks.com. And you can check out BlackHeart Bikes on Instagram at BlackHeart Bike Co. or blackheartbikeco.com. Yeah, Zach, Mikey, this has been nice to really get some insight behind this collab that kind of, I don't know, definitely took my Instagram feed by storm, but I feel like it's kind of, there's definitely been some buzz around the collaboration. So it's been great to kind of get a bit more information and in detail as to how that came about. Thank you both for coming on the show today and sharing your perspectives. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Warren, Alex, Skyler. Appreciate you guys. It's cool to speak on something that we spent some time on. So appreciate your guys' interest and everyone listening to this. It's a cool moment.
Hey, what are you doing? I don't know, I'm just fucking tossing bikes in the river, bro.
All right. Our next segment is our signature segment, Into the Canal, where we take things we don't like in the world of cycling and throw them into Montreal's Lachine Canal. Or, for things we do like, we give them a chameleon to recognize the like somewhat hard climb, Chameleon Oud in Montreal, Quebec. Who wants to go first this week?
I have a chameleon, so I can go first. Also, Universal Alex is gonna have to come back on here and say it's the hardest climb if you keep calling it a somewhat hard climb. So I'm actually gonna chameleon. Zach mentioned it on the podcast, and it was something I had for the last episode, but I said something different. But he mentioned sticker bombing, like your bikes and your helmets, and I was gonna chameleon sticker bombing your helmets. Because I was at a race in Ottawa, and there's a team out of Ottawa called Passion Project. And they do a really cool job with like sticker bombing their helmets, and they look great. And then the other one is a group or a team. I think they're based out of LA, but Away Message. They also sticker bomb their helmets. And I think it looks really cool. It kind of fits that more like casual vibe and makes it a little more interesting. And the reason I'm also chameleoning this is because my boyfriend Nick wanted to put some stickers on his helmet, and I was like, no, like I don't think you should do that. Like he has a nice white laser, it's clean, crisp. But then he was kind of showing me like the ones he picked out, like they were quite cool and the way it would look, and I was like, oh, that actually is really cool, and it's a nice personal touch. Because yes, everyone should be in their white shoes and their white socks and their white helmets, but it's still kind of nice to add this like personal touch. That's pretty cool.
I'm a little torn on this one because my immediate reaction, the elitist cyclist in me wants to say absolutely not, I agree, no way. But I think it can be done well because I agree. I've seen the Away Message photos and I follow them on Instagram, and they definitely do it pretty well. And I mean, in my mind, it goes back to my skateboarding, snowboarding days. When I was 12 years old, I would just throw stickers on my board because I just wanted people to know I knew about all these brands. But then as I got a bit older, I realized there was kind of an art to it, and I started to appreciate a well done sticker job. And you know, pro skaters, snowboarders, whatever, they put time in it. But I mean, people who would like be really selective in the stickers they put on their board and where they put them. So I think in a similar way, it can be done well on a bike, because I've also seen some people who just like sticker the crap out of the frames. Maybe it's because it's an old frame, and to me, it just doesn't look good. But I think, yeah, I don't know. I'm open to the idea. Let's say that I'm open to it if it's done well.
Yeah, like I can definitely vouch for stickering your bike equipment. I personally have stickered up my cyclocross bike, and I feel like sticker jobs are kind of in line with cross culture. I feel like it's sort of something that is complementary. It just has that kind of aesthetic and feeling where you want to kind of personalize your equipment for that particular discipline. And so on my cross bike, it's a felt. And so it says felt all over the bike. And so I stickered it up with stickers from a local boutique in Toronto called Better Gift Shop. Their logo is just the word better. So all over my cross bike, it says felt better. So shout out Better Gift Shop for the stickers. And now I have this very hilarious pun all over my cross bike.
I love the stickers on your cross bike, Alex. That also was a part of my commission.
Thanks.
I'll add that to it. I'm just so nice today.
Alex, what do you got?
All right, so I'm going to give another comedian to a product that we probably should have just shouted out during the introduction. We were kind of going through an overview of kind of like quickly the news that's happened in the world of cycling since our last episode. I kind of forgot about it till now, and so I think this is the perfect opportunity to give it a shout out. There's a boutique in Bari, Italy, a little known boutique called LC23. And it's a clothing store there that sells actually their own clothes, and it's not very big. I personally like their stuff. It's very fun, very Italian, in the sense that it's kind of playful, but still very put together and clean in a certain way. And LC23 did a collaboration with the famous cycling sunglasses brand Brico, of which I, as everyone knows, is a huge fan. Brico re-released, or I should say retroed out their detector sunglasses, which were ultra popular in the 90s. I have a pair, but the problem I had with the pair that I got and the release of the pair that I got was that they didn't include an option that was white. I feel very strongly about having your sunglasses match your helmet, and so that was a huge problem when I bought them, is that I am now mismatched between my sunglasses and my helmet. But in this collaboration, they released a pair of Bricos that are white. And so they look amazing. I think they did a really good job with this collab. They're off-white with some red, like very minor details. And the LC23 logo is on the bridge of the sunglasses and on the arms. Looks really cool. Problem is that naturally with any very hyped collaboration, it's sold out. So I've missed my shot to get a pair. But I have to throw these sunglasses at the top of Camille because they look beautiful. Wish I got a pair myself. I slept on it, and now I am regretting it looking at them as I speak about them right now.
I love these. I also love their, like, the way they posted about them, like their advertising campaign, with all the old guys just ripping around with them on. Love it. I love it. Alex in 50 years. Yeah, these are sweet.
Okay, I'm going to go last. This is sort of a follow-up to my Canal from the last episode where I threw carbon bikes into the Canal, and I talked about how cracked my frame after like having for 9 months and riding only 500K. And I said, I'm not going to name the brand. That's not really fair. Well, guess what? I am going to name it because they're not going to warranty my frame. So I'm throwing Ibis bicycles into the Canal. So you might hear that name and be like, what's Ibis? It is mostly a mountain bike brand, but they do also make the Ibis Hakka MX, which is what I had as my cross bike. It actually has a pretty good history as a cross bike in the World Cup. And that was part of the reason I bought it. And I was like, yeah, carbon bikes, man. People say they're good for racing, snappy acceleration, blah, blah, blah. Well, as I talked about last episode, I cracked it and I don't even know how. And their response to the photos that my mechanic submitted on my behalf is that it looks like an impact from a crash. And so they're not going to warranty the frame. The best they're offering is a crash replacement frame for $1,100 US plus shipping. So in Canadian, that's going to add up to close to $2,000. Do I really want to spend $2,000 on another carbon frame only to have it crack again? No, I don't. So I don't think I'm going to do that. So yeah, Ibis, you're in the Canal because, first of all, yes, I have crashed that bike at a speed of about 4 kilometers an hour. It tipped over, if you want to call that a crash. I don't know. If you think that a bike tipping over at 4 kilometers an hour into a pile of leaves is a crash, then, man, I don't want to ride one of your mountain bikes because the rest of my frame was pristine and in great condition. So I'm not sure how they arrived at that conclusion, to be honest. And to be fair, after this episode, I'm going to send them a very angry email because it's wild to me that if that's all it takes to break a carbon frame, I don't know why anyone would buy a carbon frame who isn't a pro cyclist. And I never want to ride carbon again. And it's not worth the slightly lower weight and slightly snappier acceleration that I did notice. That's just so wild to me that they're claiming that's a frame from use and put 500 kilometers on it. I did one cross race, did not crash in that race. Then I broke my wrist, so I couldn't ride. I took the bike packing this year, did one gravel race, also didn't crash. The one time the bike tipped over was last fall. I don't know. Sorry, Ibis. You're in the canal. Again, I'll just second carbon frames being in the canal because this is insane that I even have to worry about a frame cracking after riding it for 500 kilometers. I'm so glad I have an aluminum road bike. I should have stuck with my steel cross bike.
So this is so sad to me because I remember when Warren first got this bike last year, he was so excited to ride it. And it was his first carbon bike. So I was hoping he'd have a positive experience with carbon, especially in the world of cross, because I personally have a cross carbon bike, which I crash approximately once per lap in every race that I have done and will ever do. And somehow my frame remains intact. So it's either poor Warren has the worst luck in the world and or these Ibis frames are just not worth purchasing. I'm not sure which it is. But for all of our listeners out there, I ask you to post in the comments or DM us, which bike should Warren try next for gravel / cyclocross, and which standard frame should it be?
Yes. Which color?
Yes, please let us know in the comments or DM us or email us at cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com. I'm open to suggestions. Unfortunately, the reality is there's almost zero pure cross frames still being designed.
Canyon inflate, baby.
Woo!
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe.
Honestly,
It's
love
aluminum.
it.
But isn't that
I
carbon?
have the aluminum one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aluminum, yes. I will do aluminum. No You can DM me carbon suggestions, but I'm just going to reply with a poo emoji. Because absolutely not. Never again.
Justice for Warren and his Ibis.
Not for the Ibis, just for me.
Justice for Warren.
Just
Just
for
for
Warren.
me. For my wallet.
Yeah.
Fuck. And now for our last segment, we are finally back to rating bikes. So this is We Rate Your Bike for Free, where we take photos of bikes submitted to us by our listeners and give a rating on about scale of 1 to 10. And we do it for free. We provide this service and we offer suggestions on how to improve your bike. We have not done it in a very long time, and we are sorry for that. We have a huge backlog of bike photos that we could rate. And so we're finally going to start doing that. So today we are going to rate a submission from a listener who they submitted their bike and they said, first time DMer, but long time listener, giving you a bike to rate if you have the time. Enjoy. To show you how far behind. This person sent it in January of this year. So that's their only message. And I just want to politely ask our listeners, when you submit your bike, please give some details. This is a Canal road bike frame. It's rim brake. I could go on the website and look up what it is, but I'm not going to do that. So anyway, I'm going to describe the bike. So it's a Canal road bike, rim brake model. Looks like it has Campagnolo group set. Yeah, that's Campagnolo. It has a Ojeda seat post, maybe Campagnolo wheels that, I don't know, they look to be about maybe 25 mils, maybe deep. Pretty nice looking wheel set, just maybe not as deep as I'd like. Has some, I can't tell if those are Arundel bottle cages or not. I can't tell if they're metal or carbon, to be honest, from this angle. External cable routing. The stem looks like it's slammed. Maybe there's a tiny little, no, I think there might be like a 5 mil spacer in there. The fork is black. The rest of the frame is white. And then, seat post and stem are black bar tape. Honestly, I associate Canelli with like fixies, to be honest. I'd be lying if I said I know much about the brand's heritage. So like when I saw this submitted for a second, I thought it was a fixed gear bike, but no, it's I don't know, it's a nice looking road bike. The obviously don't know what this person looks like. The saddle looks a little low. I'd like to see a bit more of an aggressive saddle to bar drop, but at least the stems is almost slammed. Campagnolo is, I think, the best looking group set out there, so that's a plus in my books. It does look like those might be like cross or gravel pedals there, which is or maybe they're speed play. I can't tell.
I think they're
Either way,
speed play.
Ew, I don't like speed play. I just listen. I understand people need to use them for like knee and foot issues. I probably need them for my weird feet, but I won't do it. You know what? This is a solid metal bike. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10. What do you both think?
Well, I'll definitely give them a style point for the way they've placed the bike. The crank at 3 o'clock, the valves on the tubes down at 6 o'clock. They've set it up nicely for us to rate, so I'll give them a +1 on that. I think, yeah, I've seen the Cinellis that are like a little bit more colorful, and I like them better. But this does look really nice. It looks quite clean, especially for like a rim brake bike. It looks good. So I'm going to say an 8. I'll give it an 8.
Yeah, so I think more specifically, I did a bit of digging on this frame just to get a better understanding of what it is. So it's the Cinelli Nemo, which is their kind of flagship modern steel road bike. And so it's pretty classic looking. I mean, when I look at bikes, I'm a big fan of the horizontal top tube. I don't like too much of a slope. This one's sloping ever so marginally, but is pretty near parallel to the ground. So I'll give it a pass. It's gray or silver. It's like a muted kind of gray. It's not shiny, but it's a pretty inconspicuous color. So pretty muted there. So nothing to write home about color-wise. It's fine. I will give them the Italian factor as a bonus because it is a Cinelli. And like Warren alluded to earlier, Cinelli's no longer one of those brands that's on the forefront of R&D for road bikes. They're not in the Pro Tour. They're not making cutting-edge frames. They do have some carbon frames, and they do have a carbon aero frame, but it's like an open mold frame. It's not proprietary or anything like that. But they do have a cycling heritage. They've been around for a long time. So despite all that, I still love them for what they are. So looking at this bike, I mean, it's also got a slammed stem, Campagnolo, rim brake, campy wheels. It's like a pretty through and through Italian bike that's well set up. So it's not the most beautiful bike I've ever seen, but there's also nothing wrong with it. So I think I'm going to have to go with an 8 on this as well. I mean, the 2 missing points are just because it doesn't have that wow factor beyond doing everything right. But I do like it.
No, it's a perfectly solid utilitarian metal bike that will probably outlast most bikes out there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it I agree. That's sort of where I dock the points. It's just kind of missing that flashy wow factor. But to be honest, if somebody showed up in a group ride on this bike, I'd probably like be not drooling over it, but I'd be like, oh, that's a nice bike.
I'd be a little jealous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so would I, because it doesn't fucking crack.
It wouldn't crack. But this is just one of those. I feel like the person who owns this bike, this is someone who's already had a carbon fiber bike. Like they've already probably bought like the Pinarello Dogma or like the Cervelo S5, and they're just like they're in their post-carbon phase like Warren's in right now, where they've just kind of been there, done that, and now they just want a bike that's going to last them a lifetime, that's kind of iconic, and this is the one they settled on. And respect. It looks really nice.
Yeah, I like the mismatched fork as well.
Yeah.
I'm not deducting points for that at all. I think it works here, especially.
Yeah, I think it looks nice.
Well, and especially with the rest of the parts being black too, that they've obviously thought about that, which is I appreciate. All right, so thank you for sending that bike in, and a reminder: if you would like us to rate your bike for free, you can DM it to us on Instagram. You can email it to us at cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com. Even on Instagram, if you go into our link tree, you can find a link to an email or messages that way. You can send it that way. And apologies if you've already submitted and we haven't got to. If you want to resubmit it, that'd be very helpful so we don't have to scroll to the bottom of our DMs. We do have a bunch saved, but not all of them. So anyway, we encourage you to submit or resubmit your bikes. We apologize for the delay. We will rate some bikes. We promise. That's it for this episode of Cycling Fashion Week. A big thank you to Mikey Ojeda from Bleach Design Works and Zach Lambert from BlackHeart Bikes for coming on and talking about their collaboration with MAAP and on both that really nice kit collection, but also the full bike build that's available as part of that collection. And also, again, another shout out to Cody Chenard from Luft Los Angeles for making that happen. Thank you, Italian Alex and Skyler, for being on the show. You are rehired. Universal Alex is now fired. That's it for this week. We'll have a new episode for you coming soon in the next few weeks. Thanks for listening. And as always, you can contact us at cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com or simply DM us on Instagram. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back with a new episode in a few weeks. Take care.
Bye.